said that calling on Jesus didn't seem to help in some of the cases he knew where they did that to try to abort the abduction.
Yep, it doesn't work. I'll tell you the times it does work. It works when the entity you're dealing with believes in Jesus.
Oh. Some of them do, you mean?
Well, I'm not saying alien entities do, but I'm saying that, the dead dude attachment type, if they believe in Jesus. But then, of course, when you're dealing with a dead dude type, there's no point in invoking Jesus because you're just counseling somebody who's got a problem and getting them to resolve their problem.
Right. Now, do you believe there's such a thing as spiritual law that these demons have to back off at the name of Jesus?
No, there's not.
That's just something that Christian exorcists use, and of course they get good results now.
Well, they think they do. I mean, I watched some Christians perform an exorcism one time, and when they were done, and the individual, the whole thing was over and done with, I can guarantee you that they didn't get rid of it. They just made it mad.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know there's some very recalcitrant cases where they have to keep working on them, and maybe the demon leaves for a while, then it comes back again.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that they don't, it doesn't work if what happens is that, once again, the characteristic of a truly demonic type entity is to not give. I mean, they don't even want to talk to you. And at a certain point, they will stop talking, they will recede into these interstitial spaces, and they will go quiescent because they don't want to be bothered.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just totally non-giving, to such an extent that it's the only way that you can ever really grasp it is to be in the presence of it because you can feel it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, it's like a black hole. It sucks at you.
Gosh.
And that's why it took me 6 months to get over it, because it sucks the life force out of you just by being in its presence.
Now, tell me a little more about the techniques you use to rid someone of a demonic, possessing entity there.
Techniques?
Like, how do you talk to them, or how do you proceed, with the exorcism? What are some of the things you actually do,
Well, one of the things that I do is that and I kind of came by this almost by accident, it just seemed like the right thing to do, is that I decide to engage them in a little dialogue because, like I said, they don't like to give, they don't like to talk. However,
that's not just because they're lazy.
It's because they refuse to give.
Yeah.
However, you can challenge them by challenging their ego. And if you challenge their ego and you continue to challenge their ego and they keep responding to you because they have this incredible ego, what happens is after a period of time of engaging in this and it's very tricky to describe it third hand or out of the situation itself is extremely difficult because you actually have to be there to be observing and interacting with it dynamically. But after a certain period of time of this engagement, they begin to lose force. You are effectively turning the tables on them by forcing them. You're tricking them.
Oh.
You see, you're tricking them into giving their force by challenging their ego because their ego is their Achilles heel.
I was going to say Achilles heel also.
And once at a certain point you have weakened them, and it's usually by engaging them in Jesuitic reasoning.
Interesting.
And then when they
have such pride of intellect.
Oh yeah, the pride and the intellect, and if you challenge that, they will respond and they will weaken, and then at a certain point, and you can tell when they begin to weaken, at a certain point, that's when you pit your own will, literally, against them, and you demand that they leave because you tell them that you're not going to stop until they do. You will continue to challenge. I mean, I even told this to this one. We can sit here all night, all day tomorrow. I'm not quitting. You've got two choices.
And at that point, they are not like undeceived, they're still falling for that little trick, and they can't resist responding to the challenge to their ego.
Right. Right. So at that point, that's when I could basically jumped in his face and said, you know, all right, I won, you leave. I mean, it was kind of like, you know, the devil came to Georgia and we got into this fiddle contest.
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of what we were doing. We were having this little, fiddle contest, and I won. And at that point in time, the poor guy swelled up like about double his size. All of a sudden, let loose with the most god-awful expulsion of gas, screamed the most awful scream. I mean, it was like something was tearing him in half, and then you could hear this ululating scream traveling across the room to the door and out. And it was gone. And then the guy just collapsed, A few minutes later, bring him out, and he doesn't remember a thing. And how do you tell some guy, guess what? You got a demon.
Yeah. Well, how did his self-esteem do after that?
Oh, he was doing really fine for a period of time. And then what happened was, and this was the funny thing, because I warned him about it, because one of the things that I had extracted from this demon in the course of this conversation was the way and means that he had access to this guy was during sexual intercourse with this girl.
Really?
Yeah. And
that's interesting. I mean, we're getting so close to break about. Sure want to get into that a little bit and how that works,
Right, so I warned him about interacting with her, and she came on all sweetness and light and so on and so forth, and he was deceived, and it wasn't, I don't think it was 6 months, he was back in the same boat again. I don't know if he had the same demon or the same, situation.
Because he was still with the same woman?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, he was deceived by her sweetness and and this is, in some cases, how these things get to us. They get to us through other people.
Now, this woman that was his contact here initially, that opened him up for this possession, was she like self-consciously aware that she was having traffic with these evil beings?
In a certain sense, it was a real unusual situation. She got possessed actually at a Pentecostal church.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and it was during this laying on of hands that this demon entered her, which kind of blows the heck out of some theories that some people have. And she doesn't remember exactly what happened, because she remembered she was up at the altar and they all had their hands raised up in the air and they were praying on each other and laying on hands and so on and so forth. And the next thing she knew, she found herself laying on the floor with all these people holding her down. And then she was locked up in a mental hospital and put on Prozac. What she had done was she had pulled a pin out of the pocket of one of the men that was at the altar and had tried to stab somebody. She had just gone into this, this demonic frenzy and had started trying to stab with this pin and was foaming at the mouth, and they all wrestled her to the floor, and then they just decided she was mentally ill and put her in the hospital. Her family put her in the hospital, put her on Prozac. And then, of course, it just, from that point on, she just deteriorated rapidly. She was going out, from being a real good Christian girl, she was going out to bars and actually inviting 4 or 5 men out behind the bar to have intercourse, one after the other.
And it all got started by attending a Pentecostal laying on of hands ceremony there.
Yeah, sad to say, but that's what happened. But then, of course, that's not saying anything about Pentecostal churches. What I'm saying here is it depends upon the person and their internal orientation, I suppose, and why they're going to a Pentecostal church. I've encountered people who go to Pentecostal churches because that's how they get their cookies.
Uh-huh. Well, we're here at our break time. Let's just hold it there, and when we come back, we'll just pick up where we're leaving off. I'm enjoying this interview immensely, and I'm very intrigued with some of these ideas you put out I've never heard before, but they have a real plausibility to them, I think. And we're interviewing Laura Knight here, and we'll be back shortly on Night Search, so stay tuned.